The needle hurt more than I expected. Father Valencia held my forearm steady while Brother Timothy worked the tattoo gun with steady hands. Each letter burned into my skin like a promise I could never take back. Rule 1, Brother Timothy said as he traced the words across my wrist. Never look directly into their eyes during the final prayer. I was 16 then, young enough to think this was some kind of honor, old enough to know that once those words became part of my flesh, there would be no going back to the normal world. Rule 2. The needle moved to my inner forearm. Salt the wounds before they close. Father Valencia squeezed my shoulder. His fingers were rough from decades of this work. The salt prevents regeneration, he explained. Without it, you'll be fighting the same demon for hours. Rule 3. The burning continued up my arm. Burn the habit within 1 hour. Why 1 hour? I asked through gritted teeth. Any longer and the fabric becomes a beacon, Brother Timothy said without looking up. Other demons can track the scent. You'll have more than one possessed nun to deal with. The final rule took the longest to ink. Brother Timothy's hand moved carefully across my upper arm, just below the shoulder. Rule 4. Count the rosary beads. There must be exactly 59. 59? I asked. Not 60? Father Valencia's grip tightened. Standard rosaries have 59 beads. If you count 60, you're looking at a mimic. Kill it immediately. If you count 58, the demon has consumed 1 bead's worth of prayer. The possession is nearly complete. I left the monastery that day with my arm wrapped in bandages and my head full of instructions I hoped I'd never need. Father Valencia gave me a leather satchel containing salt, matches, a silver knife blessed by 3 different bishops, and a small notebook filled with the names and locations of convents across the state. Start small, he said. Sister Marguerite at St. Lucia's has been acting strangely for 3 weeks. The other sisters are concerned. St. Lucia's convent sat on 40 acres of farmland outside Millbrook. I drove there on a Tuesday morning in October, my bandaged arm throbbing with each gear shift. The Mother Superior, Sister Catherine, met me at the front gate. "You're much younger than I expected," she said, looking me up and down. Her gray hair was pulled back severely, and her blue eyes held a weariness that came from seeing too much. "Father Valencia sent me," I said. "About Sister Marguerite." Sister Catherine nodded and led me through the courtyard. "She's been refusing meals for 2 weeks. Says the food tastes like ash. Yesterday she started speaking Latin during morning prayers, but it wasn't any Latin I recognized. Where is she now?" "The infirmary. Dr. Hendricks examined her yesterday. Said she was perfectly healthy, but her temperature has been stuck at 94 degrees for 5 days. That's not normal." The infirmary was a small building connected to the main convent by a covered walkway. Sister Marguerite lay in the single bed, her eyes closed, her lips moving silently. She was young, maybe early 20s, with dark hair and pale skin that looked almost translucent in the afternoon light. "Sister Marguerite?" I said softly. Her eyes opened. I almost looked directly at them before remembering Rule 1. Instead, I focused on her forehead. "Who are you?" she asked. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been screaming. "A friend of Father Valencia's. I'm here to help." She sat up slowly. "Help with what?" "You've been sick. The other sisters are worried." Sister Marguerite laughed, but the sound came out wrong, too sharp, too long. "Sick? I've never felt better. I can hear everything now. The prayers of the dying 3 towns over, the confessions of sinners who think God isn't listening, the lies people tell themselves before sleep." I reached into my satchel and pulled out a rosary. "Would you pray with me?" "Of course." She swung her legs over the side of the bed. "What prayer would you like?" "The joyful mysteries." She reached for the rosary, and I watched her fingers as she began to count. 1, 2, 3. Her lips moved silently as she worked through the beads. 27, 28, 29. I counted along with her, my own fingers working through a rosary in my pocket. 45, 46, 47. Sister Marguerite reached the end of the rosary and looked up at me. 58, she said with a smile. My stomach dropped. According to Rule 4, 58 beads meant the possession was nearly complete. I had minutes, maybe less, before the demon fully took hold. Sister, I said carefully, would you mind if I counted them myself? Just to make sure I did the prayer correctly. Of course. She handed me the rosary. I counted quickly. 58 beads. The demon had consumed 1 bead's worth of prayer, 1 small piece of Sister Marguerite's faith. Soon it would consume the rest. Sister Marguerite, I said, I need you to listen carefully. I'm going to help you fight this. Her head tilted to one side, like a curious dog. Fight what? The thing that's been making you sick. The thing that's been whispering in your ears. Her expression changed. The confused innocence melted away, replaced by something cold and calculating. You know. Yes. How interesting. She stood up from the bed. Father Valencia trained you, didn't he? I can smell his prayers on your skin, mixed with ink and blood. I pulled the silver knife from my satchel. Step away from the bed, sister. Oh, but I'm not Sister Marguerite anymore, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Haven't been for days. She's still in here, though. Would you like to hear her scream? The possessed nun opened her mouth, and Sister Marguerite's voice came out, high and desperate. Please help me. It's so cold in here. I can't move. I can't. The voice cut off, replaced by laughter that didn't belong to any human throat. She tastes like fear and regret, the demon said. All the prayers she whispered late at night, begging God to forgive her for thoughts she never acted on. All the doubt she carried about her calling. Delicious. I gripped the knife tighter. Let her go. No, the demon said with Sister Marguerite's face. I think I'll keep this one. She's particularly devout. The faithful ones always burn brighter. The possessed nun lunged at me. I stepped aside and slashed with the knife, opening a deep cut across her forearm. Black blood poured from the wound, steaming when it hit the floor. I reached into my satchel for the salt. Rule 2. Salt the wounds before they close. The demon screamed as the salt hit the cut, but it was Sister Marguerite's voice doing the screaming. The wound began to smoke and sizzle, and the black blood turned red. You're hurting her, the demon said, backing away from me. Every cut you make, she feels. Every grain of salt burns her flesh too. I know, I said, advancing, but it's the only way. I made 3 more cuts before the demon stopped fighting. With each wound, with each handful of salt, I could see more of Sister Marguerite returning. The cold calculation in her eyes faded, replaced by pain and confusion. Please, she whispered, and this time it was definitely her voice. Make it stop. I grabbed her wrist and pressed my thumb against Rule 1, tattooed on my skin. Sister Marguerite, I need you to pray with me, the final prayer. But whatever you do, don't look into my eyes while we pray. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I can feel it fighting. It doesn't want to let go. It doesn't have a choice. We knelt together on the infirmary floor. I began the prayer of exorcism that Father Valencia had drilled into me for 2 years. Sister Marguerite joined in, her voice growing stronger with each word. The demon fought back. Sister Marguerite's body convulsed, and her voice cracked as something else tried to speak through her. But she kept praying, kept her eyes fixed on the floor. Almost there, I whispered. Keep going. The final words of the prayer left our lips together. Sister Marguerite collapsed forward, her body going limp. For a moment, I thought she was dead. Then she took a shuddering breath and looked up at me. "Is it gone?" she whispered. I helped her sit up. Her eyes were clear now, no trace of the calculating coldness that had been there before. "Yes, it's gone." She started crying then, deep sobs that shook her whole body. I could feel everything it was doing, every word it spoke with my voice, every thought it had. It knew things about me that I've never told anyone. "That's how they work," I said gently. "They feed on our secrets and doubts." Sister Marguerite looked down at her arms, at the cuts I'd made and the salt burns around them. "Will these heal?" "The physical wounds will. The rest." I shrugged. "Time will tell." I helped her back to the bed and then gathered up her blood-stained habit from the floor. Rule 3 was clear: burn the habit within 1 hour. I checked my watch. 23 minutes had passed since the exorcism began. "I need to burn this," I told her, holding up the black fabric. "Why?" "The demon left traces on it. If I don't destroy it soon, other demons will be able to track the scent." Sister Marguerite nodded weakly. "There's a furnace in the basement of the main building. Sister Catherine has the key." I found Sister Catherine in the chapel, praying alone in the front pew. She looked up when I entered, taking in my appearance. My shirt was torn and stained with black blood. Sweat dripped from my forehead. "Is she?" Sister Catherine began. "She's free," I said. "Do you have access to the furnace?" Sister Catherine stood immediately. "Of course, follow me." We walked quickly through the corridors of the convent. Other nuns peered out from doorways as we passed, their faces full of questions I couldn't answer. Not yet. The basement was cool and damp. Sister Catherine led me to an old coal furnace that had been converted to burn wood. She helped me light it, and within minutes we had a good fire going. I threw Sister Marguerite's habit into the flames. The fabric caught immediately, burning with an odd blue-green color that made my skin crawl. The smell was worse than rotten eggs mixed with sulfur. "Dear God," Sister Catherine said, covering her nose with her sleeve. "It'll pass," I said, watching the habit turn to ash. "The smell always fades." We waited until every scrap of fabric was gone. When the last blue flame died out, I checked my watch again. 57 minutes. Close, but within the time limit. "What happens now?" Sister Catherine asked as we climbed back upstairs. "Sister Marguerite will need rest and counseling. The experience leaves scars. As for the rest of the convent, you should increase security for a few weeks. Demons sometimes travel in pairs." Sister Catherine stopped walking. "You think there might be another one?" "It's possible. They're drawn to places of strong faith. Convents, monasteries, churches, anywhere people gather to pray." We reached the main floor, and Sister Catherine led me to her office. She poured 2 cups of tea from a pot that had been sitting on her desk. The tea was cold, but I drank it anyway. "How long have you been doing this?" she asked. 2 years of training. This was my first actual case. "Your first?" She looked surprised. "You seem so confident." Father Valencia drilled the procedures into me until I could do them in my sleep. The confidence was mostly an act. Sister Catherine smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. "Well, it was a convincing act. Sister Marguerite is lucky you came when you did." I finished my tea and stood to leave. "I'll check on her in a few days. If anything unusual happens before then, call Father Valencia immediately." What should we tell the other sisters? The truth. Sister Marguerite was sick, and now she's better. They don't need the details. I drove back to the monastery as the sun set behind the trees. My arm ached where the fresh tattoos pulled at the skin, and I was exhausted. But I felt something else too. Pride, maybe. Or satisfaction. I'd followed the rules exactly as Father Valencia had taught me, and I'd saved Sister Marguerite. Father Valencia was waiting for me in the courtyard when I arrived. He took one look at my blood-stained shirt and nodded. How did it go? 58 beads. The possession was almost complete, but the exorcism worked. She's free. Any complications? The demon knew you'd trained me. It could smell your prayers on my skin. Father Valencia frowned. That's concerning. They're getting smarter, more aware of our methods. We walked into the main building together. Brother Timothy was in the kitchen preparing dinner. He looked up when we entered. Successful first mission? He asked. Successful, I said. But I have questions. Father Valencia gestured for me to sit at the long wooden table. Ask. The demon said Sister Marguerite tasted like fear and regret. It knew her private thoughts, her doubts about her calling. How is that possible? Demons feed on negative emotions, Father Valencia explained. Fear, doubt, guilt, anger. The stronger these feelings are, the easier it becomes for a demon to take hold. Sister Marguerite must have been struggling with her faith for some time before the possession occurred. So the demons don't just randomly pick victims? No, Brother Timothy said, setting down plates for dinner. They're strategic. They look for people who are already spiritually vulnerable, people who are questioning their beliefs or carrying heavy guilt. That's why we focus on convents and monasteries, Father Valencia added. Religious life is difficult. Many people enter it with unrealistic expectations or for the wrong reasons. When the reality doesn't match their expectations, doubt creeps in, and doubt creates an opening. I thought about Sister Marguerite's tears, the way she'd sobbed after the demon was gone. She blamed herself, didn't she, for letting it in? Probably, Father Valencia said. Victims often do. But it's not their fault. Demons are patient. They can wait months or even years for the right moment to strike. Brother Timothy served dinner: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans from the monastery garden. We ate in silence for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. Father Valencia, I said finally, what happens if I encounter a mimic? A rosary with 60 beads instead of 59. You kill it immediately, he said without hesitation. Mimics aren't possessing human hosts. They're demons that have created their own physical form. They're much more dangerous than possessed humans because they have full access to their demonic powers. How do I kill something like that? The same way you'd kill any demon. Cut it, salt the wounds, burn the remains. But be careful. Mimics are fast and strong. They don't have human limitations. Have you ever fought one? Father Valencia rolled up his sleeve, revealing a long scar that ran from his wrist to his elbow. Once, 20 years ago, a mimic had infiltrated a convent in upstate New York. It had been posing as Sister Agnes for 3 months before anyone realized something was wrong. What gave it away? It didn't know the words to Ave Maria. It could fake a lot of things, but it couldn't fake genuine prayer. When the other sisters realized what it was, they called for help. And you killed it? Eventually. But not before it killed 2 nuns and injured 4 others. Mimics don't go down easily. After dinner, I went to my room and sat on the narrow bed. I pulled out the small mirror from my nightstand and examined my arm. The tattoos were still red and swollen, but they were healing well. I read through the rules again, tracing each word with my finger. Rule 1. Never look directly into their eyes during the final prayer. Rule 2. Salt the wounds before they close. Rule 3. Burn the habit within 1 hour. Rule 4. Count the rosary beads. There must be exactly 59. 4 simple rules that could mean the difference between life and death. 4 rules that were now part of my body, part of who I was. I opened the notebook Father Valencia had given me and looked at the next name on the list. Sister Theodora at Holy Family Convent in Westbrook. According to the notes, she'd been having violent nightmares for 6 weeks. The other nuns reported hearing her screaming in Latin during the night. Tomorrow, I would drive to Westbrook. Tomorrow, I would probably have to use my knife again. Tomorrow, I would find out if my first successful exorcism had been luck or skill. I lay down on the bed and closed my eyes, but sleep didn't come easily. Every time I started to drift off, I heard Sister Marguerite's voice pleading for help. Or worse, I heard the demon's laughter echoing through my head. This was my life now. This was what I'd chosen when I let Brother Timothy ink those rules into my skin. I was a hunter of possessed nuns, a killer of demons that wore human faces. And despite everything I'd seen today, despite the blood and the screaming and the smell of burning fabric, I knew I'd made the right choice. Someone had to do this work. Someone had to stand between the innocent and the things that wanted to devour them. It might as well be me. I woke before dawn the next morning, my arms still throbbing from the fresh tattoos. The drive to Westbrook would take 3 hours, and I wanted to arrive before the nuns began their afternoon prayers. Holy Family Convent was smaller than St. Lucia's, built from gray stone that looked almost black in the overcast morning light. Only 12 nuns lived here, according to my notes. Sister Theodora had been with them for 8 months. Mother Superior Patricia met me at the gate. She was older than Sister Catherine, maybe 70, with hands that shook slightly when she spoke. "Thank God you're here," she said, leading me through a small garden. Sister Theodora didn't sleep at all last night. We could hear her pacing in her cell, talking to someone who wasn't there. What was she saying? We couldn't make out most of it. Latin phrases mixed with something else. Something that didn't sound like any language I know. Mother Patricia stopped walking and turned to face me. "There's something else you should know. Yesterday morning, we found dead birds in the courtyard, dozens of them. They were arranged in a perfect circle around the statue of St. Francis." My stomach tightened. Arranged how? Their necks were all pointing inward, toward the statue, like they were worshipping it. But St. Francis's face, she shuddered. Someone had carved symbols into the stone, deep cuts that looked fresh. "Can you show me?" We walked to the center of the courtyard. The bird carcasses had been cleaned up, but I could see dark stains on the cobblestones where their blood had pooled. The statue of St. Francis stood 8 feet tall, carved from white marble. But Mother Patricia was right about the face. Someone had gouged strange symbols into the forehead and cheeks. The cuts were deep and precise, like they'd been made with surgical tools. "Have you seen these symbols before?" I asked. Mother Patricia shook her head. "Never. But they make me feel sick just looking at them." I studied the markings more closely. They weren't random scratches. These were deliberate, organized patterns that seemed to follow some kind of logic. One symbol looked like an inverted cross with extra lines branching off the sides. Another resembled a spiral that folded in on itself. Where is Sister Theodora now? Her cell. She refused to come to morning prayers. Said the chapel hurt her ears. Mother Patricia led me into the main building. The corridors were narrow and dark, lit only by small windows set high in the walls. We passed several nuns who watched me with curious expressions. Word had obviously spread that an outsider was coming to help with Sister Theodora. "Here," Mother Patricia said, stopping outside a wooden door. "She's been quiet for the last hour." I pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. No movement, no voices, no sound at all. "Sister Theodora?" I called softly. Silence. I tried the handle. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open slowly. Sister Theodora sat in the corner of the small room, her back pressed against the wall. She was young, maybe 19 or 20, with red hair that had been cut short in the traditional nun style. Her eyes were open, but they were rolled back so far that only the whites showed. "Sister Theodora?" She didn't respond. I stepped into the room and closed the door behind me. The walls were covered with more symbols, carved directly into the stone with fingernails. Some of the cuts were deep enough that blood had dried in the grooves. I reached into my satchel and pulled out a rosary. "Sister Theodora, I'm here to help you." Her head turned toward me, but her eyes stayed rolled back. When she spoke, her voice sounded like gravel being poured into a metal bucket. "Help?" She laughed, and the sound made my teeth ache. "She doesn't want help. She wants to see how far down the spiral goes." I kept my eyes focused on her forehead, remembering Rule 1. "Where is Sister Theodora?" "Oh, she's here. Deep down in the dark place where all the pretty prayers go to die. Would you like to join her?" Sister Theodora stood up slowly. Her movements were too fluid, like her joints weren't connected properly. She began to walk toward me, and I noticed that her feet weren't quite touching the ground. "Let me count your beads," I said, holding out the rosary. "No," she said with that same grinding voice. "I have a better idea. Let me count yours." She lunged at me faster than anything human should be able to move. I barely got the silver knife out of my satchel before she was on me. Her fingernails, sharpened to points and stained with dried blood, raked across my chest. I slashed with the knife, opening a cut along her arm. Black blood sprayed across the wall, hissing when it hit the stone. But instead of backing away, Sister Theodora grabbed my wrist and pulled me closer. "You smell like fear and determination," she whispered, her breath cold against my ear. "Father Valencia trained you well. But did he tell you what happens when a demon gets tired of playing host?" I drove my knee into her stomach and broke free. Sister Theodora stumbled backward, black blood still pouring from the cut on her arm. I reached for the salt, but she was already moving again. This time she went for my throat. I fell backward, and we both crashed to the floor. Her hands closed around my neck, and I could feel her fingernails digging into my skin. "Rule 1, she said, forcing my head up so I had to look directly into her eyes. "Never look directly into their eyes during the final prayer." Her pupils were gone. Instead of black circles, there were spirals that seemed to spin deeper and deeper into her head. I felt my thoughts starting to scatter, like someone was stirring my brain with a spoon. I forced myself to focus on the pain in my arm, where the tattoos were healing. The physical sensation helped anchor me to reality. I still had the knife in my right hand. I brought it up and drove the blade into Sister Theodora's side. She screamed and let go of my throat. I rolled away and scrambled to my feet. Black blood was spreading across the floor, smoking and bubbling where it touched the stone. "Salt," I muttered, fumbling in my satchel. "Rule 2. I poured salt into both wounds. Sister Theodora's screams became higher, more human. The grinding quality left her voice, replaced by pain and confusion. "Please," she whispered, and this time it sounded like Sister Theodora. "It's showing me things, terrible things. Make it stop." "I'm trying," I said, moving closer, "but I need you to help me. Can you pray?" I can't remember the words. It ate them all. I knelt beside her and helped her sit up against the wall. Blood was seeping through her habit, but it was red now instead of black. "Just listen to me," I said. "Repeat me." I began the prayer of exorcism. Sister Theodora tried to follow along, but every few words her voice would change. The demon was fighting harder than the one that had possessed Sister Marguerite. This one had been in control longer, had dug deeper roots. "She's mine," the demon said through Sister Theodora's mouth. "I've been building something in her mind, something beautiful and terrible. You can't take that away from me." "Watch me," I said, continuing the prayer. The demon tried a different approach. Sister Theodora's body began to convulse, and she started speaking in multiple voices at once. Some were children crying. Others were old women reciting grocery lists. One sounded like Father Valencia calling my name. I pressed my thumb against Rule 1 on my arm and kept praying. The voices got louder, more desperate. They were trying to confuse me, to make me lose track of the prayer. But I'd practiced this so many times that the words came automatically. "Almost there," I whispered to Sister Theodora during a brief moment when the other voices stopped. "Keep fighting." "I'm trying," she said through tears, "but it's so strong." The final words of the prayer echoed in the small room. Sister Theodora went completely still, her head falling forward. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then she looked up at me with clear human eyes. "Is it over?" "Yes, it's over." Sister Theodora started crying, but these were tears of relief instead of pain. I helped her to her feet and checked the wounds I'd made. They were healing normally, no sign of the black blood or sulfur smell. "The symbols on the walls," she said, looking around the room. "Did I do that?" "The demon did, using your hands. I remember some of it, like watching a movie through thick glass. I could see what was happening, but I couldn't control it." I checked my watch. The exorcism had taken 43 minutes. That left me 17 minutes to find Sister Theodora's habit and burn it. "Where are your clothes from yesterday?" "The laundry room. Sister Agnes takes care of washing." We left the cell together. Sister Theodora was weak but able to walk. Mother Patricia was waiting in the corridor with 2 other nuns. They rushed forward when they saw us. "Sister Theodora." Mother Patricia embraced the younger nun. "Are you all right?" "I think so," Sister Theodora said. "A little shaky, but all right." "I need to find her habit from yesterday," I told Mother Patricia. "The one she was wearing when the symptoms started." "Sister Agnes can show you, but why? I'll explain later. Right now, time is important." Sister Agnes led me to the laundry room in the basement. It was a small space with 2 washing machines and several clotheslines hung across the ceiling. She pointed to a pile of habits waiting to be washed. "Sister Theodora's is on top. She brought it down yesterday morning, said it smelled strange." I found the habit and held it up to the light. The fabric looked normal, but when I brought it closer to my nose, I could smell something like burning copper mixed with rotten flowers. "I need to burn this immediately. Is there a furnace?" "Next room over." Sister Agnes helped me light the furnace. Like at St. Lucia's, Sister Theodora's habit burned with an odd blue-green flame. But this time, the smell was worse. It made my eyes water and my throat close up. "Dear Lord," Sister Agnes said, backing away from the furnace. "What is that smell?" "Demon residue," I said, watching the last of the fabric turn to ash. "It'll fade in a few minutes." When the burning was complete, I checked my watch again. 58 minutes. Within the time limit, but just barely. Sister Agnes and I went back upstairs to find the other nuns gathered in the common room around Sister Theodora. She was sitting in a comfortable chair, sipping tea and looking more human than she had since I'd arrived. "How do you feel?" I asked her. "Like I've been hit by a truck," she said with a weak smile. "But better. Cleaner, if that makes sense." "It does." Mother Patricia approached me. "What happens now? Should we be worried about this happening again?" "Probably not to Sister Theodora. Once a demon has been exorcised from someone, that person becomes resistant to future possessions. But you should watch the other sisters carefully for the next few weeks." "Why?" "Sometimes demons travel in groups. If one found its way here, others might follow." I stayed at Holy Family Convent for another hour, making sure Sister Theodora was stable and answering the other nuns' questions as best I could. When I finally left, the sun was setting behind the gray stone walls. The drive back to the monastery gave me time to think. 2 successful exorcisms in 2 days. Both demons had been different. The one possessing Sister Marguerite had been almost conversational, enjoying the psychological torture. The one in Sister Theodora had been more violent, more direct in its attacks. Father Valencia was waiting for me in the courtyard again. It was becoming a routine. "How did it go?" 58 beads again, I said, but this one was stronger. more aggressive. Any injuries? I touched my throat where Sister Theodora's fingernails had left shallow cuts. Nothing serious. We walked into the dining hall together. Brother Timothy had saved me a plate of dinner, even though I was 2 hours late. The food was cold, but I ate it anyway. "Tell me about the demon," Father Valencia said. I described the carved symbols, the dead birds, the way Sister Theodora had moved without her feet touching the ground. Father Valencia listened without interrupting, but I could see concern growing in his expression. "The symbols worry me," he said when I finished. "Demons usually don't have the patience for elaborate rituals. They prefer quick possessions and immediate gratification." "What does it mean?" "I'm not sure, but I think we need to be more careful about the cases we take on. Start with the easier ones while you build experience." Brother Timothy looked up from his own dinner. "Speaking of cases, we received 3 new requests today. 2 convents and a monastery." "What kind of symptoms?" I asked. "The usual. Refusal to eat, speaking in unknown languages, violent behavior during prayers. But there was one case that seemed different." Father Valencia frowned. "Different how?" "The caller said their nun wasn't acting possessed. She was acting enlightened, claiming she could see the future, performing miracles, small ones but documented miracles." "That's not possession," I said. "That sounds like genuine religious experience." "Maybe," Brother Timothy said, "but 3 other nuns at the same convent have disappeared over the past month, just vanished from their cells in the middle of the night." Father Valencia and I exchanged glances. "Where is this convent?" "Sacred Heart in Millfield, about 2 hours north of here." "Did the caller say anything else?" "Only that they've been finding strange objects in the chapel. Wooden carvings that none of the nuns remember making. Always the same design. A tree with human faces growing from the branches." I pushed my plate away, suddenly no longer hungry. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow morning," Father Valencia said. "But this time I'm coming with you." "Why?" "Because I think we're dealing with something more than just random demon possessions. The symbols at Holy Family, the enlightened nun at Sacred Heart, the strategic nature of these attacks. Someone or something is coordinating them." "You think there's a pattern?" "I think we're being tested. Someone wants to see how we respond to different types of supernatural threats. They're learning our methods." Brother Timothy collected the empty plates. "Should we contact the other monasteries? Warn them?" "Not yet," Father Valencia said. "We don't want to cause panic over what might be a coincidence, but we'll need to be more careful, more thorough in our investigations." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. My arm had stopped throbbing, and the tattoos were healing cleanly. Rule 1, Rule 2, Rule 3, Rule 4. 4 simple guidelines that had kept me alive through 2 dangerous encounters. But Father Valencia was right. Something bigger was happening here. The demons I'd faced weren't acting randomly. They seemed to know about my training, about the rules tattooed on my arm. They were adapting their tactics. Tomorrow, I would face whatever was waiting at Sacred Heart Convent. Tomorrow, I would find out if my success had been beginner's luck or genuine skill. And for the first time since Brother Timothy had finished my tattoos, I wondered if 4 rules would be enough. I touched Rule 1 on my wrist and whispered a prayer before falling asleep. In my dreams, I saw a tree with human faces growing from its branches. Each face was screaming silently, and each pair of eyes looked exactly like mine. But as I watched, the tree began to change. The faces shifted and moved, rearranging themselves into patterns I almost recognized. Then one face opened its mouth and spoke with Sister Marguerite's voice. "Thank you," it said. Another face, this one with Sister Theodora's features, joined in. "You saved us." More faces appeared on the branches. Nuns I'd never met, but somehow knew I would encounter. Their voices created a chorus that grew louder and more urgent. "Be ready," they said together. "What's coming next is bigger than anything you've faced." I woke with a start, my heart pounding. Pale morning light was filtering through the small window of my room. I sat up and checked the clock on my nightstand. 5:30 in the morning. Too early to get up, but I knew I wouldn't be able to fall back asleep. I got dressed and walked quietly through the corridors of the monastery. Most of the brothers were still sleeping, but I could hear someone moving around in the kitchen. When I looked in, I found Father Valencia making coffee. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, pouring me a cup. "Strange dreams," I said, accepting the hot mug gratefully. "About a tree with faces." Father Valencia's expression became serious. "Tell me." I described the dream in detail. When I finished, Father Valencia was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee. "I've had similar dreams," he said finally. "For the past 3 nights. Always the same tree. Always the same message about being ready." "What do you think it means?" "I think something is trying to communicate with us. Something that wants us to succeed in what we're doing." We sat in comfortable silence, drinking our coffee and watching the sun rise through the kitchen window. After a while, Brother Timothy joined us, followed by the other brothers as they began their morning routines. "Ready for Sacred Heart?" Brother Timothy asked as he started preparing breakfast. "As ready as we can be," Father Valencia said, "but I want to make some changes to our approach." "What kind of changes?" "We'll bring more equipment, extra salt, multiple knives, emergency medical supplies, and we'll work as a team instead of sending just one person." I nodded. "The dreams mention that what's coming next is bigger than anything I've faced." "Dreams can be unreliable," Brother Timothy said, cracking eggs into a pan, "but they can also be warnings." After breakfast, Father Valencia and I spent an hour in the monastery's armory, selecting weapons and supplies. In addition to my usual satchel, we packed a larger bag with enough materials for multiple exorcisms. "One more thing," Father Valencia said as we finished packing. "I want you to memorize the backup procedures." "Backup procedures?" "What to do if the standard rules don't work, if you encounter something that doesn't follow the normal patterns." He handed me a small leather-bound book I'd never seen before. The cover was unmarked, but when I opened it, I found pages of handwritten notes in Father Valencia's careful script. "Emergency protocols," he explained. "Techniques for dealing with mimics, multiple possessions, and coordinated demonic attacks. Study it during the drive to Sacred Heart." We loaded our supplies into the monastery's old pickup truck and set off for Millfield. Father Valencia drove while I read through the emergency protocols. Some of the techniques were variations on what I already knew. Others were completely new, involving prayers I'd never heard and tools I'd never used. "Father Valencia," I said as we passed a sign for Millfield, "why didn't you teach me these techniques during my regular training?" "Because they're dangerous," he said. "The standard procedures work for 90% of cases. These emergency protocols are for situations where normal methods fail. Using them incorrectly can make a possession worse or even kill the host." "But you think we might need them today?" "I hope not. But after your dreams and the pattern we've been seeing, I want us to be prepared for anything." Sacred Heart Convent appeared ahead of us, a cluster of white buildings surrounded by farmland. As we drove through the front gate, I noticed that the gardens were overgrown and several windows were boarded up. The place felt abandoned, even though we knew at least one nun was still living there. "Remember," Father Valencia said as we parked near the main entrance, "we go in together. Don't split up, no matter what happens. And if I tell you to use the emergency protocols, don't hesitate." I checked my satchel one more time, making sure the silver knife was easily accessible. The tattoos on my arm had healed completely overnight, the skin now smooth and unmarked except for the 4 rules that would guide me through whatever waited inside. "Ready?" Father Valencia asked. "Ready," I said. We walked toward the convent together, our footsteps echoing off the empty courtyard stones. Whatever was waiting for us at Sacred Heart, we would face it as a team. The tree from my dreams might have been warning us about something bigger than standard demon possessions, but we had prepared as well as we could. The 4 rules tattooed on my arm were still my foundation, but now I had backup plans and emergency procedures. Most importantly, I had Father Valencia's experience to guide me. As we reached the front door of Sacred Heart Convent, I touched Rule 1 on my wrist one more time. Then I knocked and waited to see what would answer.